The Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana, or CRCL, was established in 1988 and made coastal protection a top priority in the state. The nonprofit group began an oyster shell recycling program in 2014. CRCL Communications Director James Karst explains the collaboration with New Orleans area restaurants.
Oyster shell recycling is something that has been occurring for probably thousands of years. I think that it is intuitive to many people who pull oysters out of the water that if they put those shells back into the water, new oysters will grow on them. The restaurants would get rid of the shell in the cheapest and easiest way possible, which was to throw it into their trash, their regular trash. So this natural process had been broken, and we recognized that we could correct that by partnering with New Orleans restaurants and putting that shell back into the water.
Restaurants discard the shells into bins. Then they're hauled to a curing site in St. Bernard Parish, where they sit in the sun for several months until they're ready to be placed along Louisiana's coastline.
We'll take the boat to the reef site, and we'll usually have people in the water, and we'll hand them a bag of shell, and they'll stack it in the water, building a wall of shell. Almost immediately, we'll see baby oysters attached to those old shells.
Frustrated that tons of oyster shells were being discarded in trash bins, New Orleans restaurateur Dickie Brennan became an advocate for the program from its conception, receiving a Distinguished Achievement Award from CRCL in 2023. Bourbon House was the first restaurant to join the team effort.
So this restaurant alone has done several hundred tons of recycling oyster shells. We go in front of a marsh that is receding, and within a short period of time, it has filled in, it's going in the right direction, it's rebuilding a marsh, rebuilding the coastline. It's amazed me that we've actually been able to pull it off. It's with volunteers, and it works, so it makes you realize, we can do some good stuff. We just get the village together and let's go do it.
In 10 years, CRCL has recycled 15 million pounds of oyster shells, with participating restaurants contributing about 1.5 million pounds per year.
We've built 5 oyster reefs so far. We're going to build our 6th reef this September, this one at Grand Bayou Indian Village in Plaquemines Parish. Louisiana has hundreds of indigenous mounds, some of them very old, older than the pyramids. It's really a remarkable thing to have in our state, but unfortunately, as one of the states most affected by rising sea levels and land loss, the mounds are disappearing or at risk of disappearing. We partner with indigenous communities to protect their mounds and their communities by building oyster reefs around them.
CRCL teamed up with the Pointe-au-Chien tribe of the Terrebonne Basin to save their sacred sites.
Pointe-au-Chien was very close to where Ida made landfall, and we've built a couple of reefs down at Pointe-au-Chien, and they survived the storm completely intact.
Reefs are monitored to assess shoreline changes and biological development.
Oyster reefs do a number of good things that are beneficial to the people of Louisiana and beneficial to the environment of Louisiana. So first of all, oysters filter water. Oyster reefs grow new oysters on them, so it helps to sustain the oyster fisheries. Oyster reefs slow the rate of land loss by up to 50%, according to research that we have done. And during a hurricane or a tropical storm, the reefs help to knock down storm surge. I think it's very interesting that it will grow with sea level rise. It will adapt for it. So if the water level goes up, because baby oysters are attaching to the reef and growing on it, the reef will grow vertically as well. So it's really a fascinating thing that we're building. And then, of course, it comes full circle because oysters eventually can be harvested from an oyster reef and taken to a restaurant and served to customers.
When we opened, we were kind of confronted with what to do with the oyster shells. In my sort of naive understanding, I thought that we could just get one of our fishermen to backhaul the shells and dump them off their boat. Doesn't quite work that way. Fortunately, the Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana came along shortly thereafter and developed a program for recycling oyster shells, which we continue to use to this day, along with a number of restaurants around town. So that's one small piece. And, I think that the philosophy of a restaurant like Pesh is that we feel that we have to be part of a chain, that we're part of a system. And it's incumbent upon us to behave appropriately and responsibly to maintain that system.
I think you should eat oysters as often as possible because they're delicious and it supports Louisiana oystermen. This is our culture, This is one of the things that has made Louisiana famous. And so we should do everything that we can to help keep it around.
Louisiana Coastal Cooking, Saturdays at 9 a.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. on WYES New Orleans. Check local listings for your public TV station. Learn more at WYES.org.